These all-time great players are supposed to perform on the biggest stage, but time and time again, they failed miserably when their team needed them the most. We always talk about the players' greatest moments in the playoffs. It's what separates the good from the great. But what about the players that were prone to underperform in the playoffs? Who should be considered the worst playoff performers? This video is going to discuss 4 players who fall into that category, and the results will shock you. Before we get started, I must mention a few disclaimers. First, we're only mentioning top 50 players. We're talking about players who are expected to come through on the biggest stage, but for one reason or another, they fell short on multiple occasions. And lastly, I'm not saying that these players did not play great in the playoffs throughout their careers, or that they're not clutch. Some of the players were able to lead their team to the finals, and some even won a few titles. But for the most part, they had some underwhelming performances. Let's start with our first example, David Robinson. Wait, hold on a minute. You're saying that the Admiral was a bad playoff performer? I wouldn't go that far, but I am saying that he did not play better in the playoffs. It's all in the numbers. In the regular season, he averaged 21.1 points per game on 52% shooting for his career. In the playoffs, he averaged 18.1 points on 48% shooting. With those numbers, you would have never guessed that he was always among the top candidates for the MVP in the 90s. But that was the thing with David Robinson. In the regular season, he was amazing. He was the most statistically dominant center in the NBA, even more so than Hakeem Olajuwon. But in the playoffs, he was like a whole other player. Let's bring up a few examples. In the 1993-94 season, he had one of the greatest individual seasons of all time. Among many things he accomplished, he won the scoring title and he led the Spurs to 55 wins. But in the first round, they got smacked by the Utah Jazz. They lost 3-1, with Robinson averaging 20 points on 41% shooting. The problem is that the Utah Jazz were an extremely physical team. Spurs coach John Lucas even said during the series that Stockton and Malone got away with murder. That was something that David didn't respond well to. His own teammate, Dale Ellis, even mentioned to the Deseret News that Dennis Rodman was their most consistent player and he was their only emotional leader. That's probably not a recipe for success, as much as I loved Rodman. But those were 2 glaring weaknesses that he had, and it was something that haunted him for years. In 1996, he faced the Jazz again, this time in the semifinals. The Spurs had home court advantage yet again, but they got trampled by an average margin of 23 points. Robinson only averaged 19.3 points. In the previous series against the Suns, he averaged 30 points on 56% shooting. So with the right matchup, he could be his dominant self. But if you applied any sort of physicality, you were taking him out of the game. After another disappointing playoff defeat, he was being criticized for being too soft. And you couldn't blame them for saying this. There were 2 other series in the 90s before Tim Duncan showed up, where he averaged under 20 points. Then there was a 1991 first round series against the Warriors, where they lost as the number 2 seed. It's just a shame that he could never assert his dominance consistently in the playoffs as he did throughout the season. Karl Malone might have gotten the best of Robinson in the playoffs, but he also had his moments of severely underperforming. Let's look at his numbers. He averaged 25 points on 52% shooting in the regular season for his career, and 24.7 points on 46% shooting in the playoffs. Now check out this next stat. There were 9 times when he was bounced from the first round. On 5 of those occasions, the Jazz had home court advantage. The 1989 playoffs was probably the worst defeat. They were the 2nd seed and they got swept by the Golden State Warriors. This describes Karl Malone and the Utah Jazz so well. They had extreme highs and lows. Now I'm not going to ignore the fact that he led his team to the finals in 2 consecutive years and to the conference finals 3 other times. He also played a big role in the Lakers reaching the finals in 2004. There were many times when Malone delivered for his team. That cannot be denied, but he has been famous for falling short under pressure. You would never know by just looking at the box score, but those who watched him play would tell you how often he would disappear in crucial moments. Let me give you an example of this. I found a perfect quote from New York Times writer Selena Roberts in 1997. This is what she said about the mailman after his disappointing series in the finals. Quote, "Fair or not, many will point to Malone as the one who did not come through in each critical moment of this series. Everything seemed to come back to Malone. He was the one who missed 2 potential game-winning free throws with 9 seconds left in Game 1. And he was the one who allowed Tony Kukoc to tip a rebound to Jordan, whose three-pointer dashed the Jazz in Game 5. He also failed to back the prickly Dennis Rodman into the post with his wide-load body. Malone decided to launch from the outside. Too often, he missed." End of quote. This was a recurring theme for him. There were 13 times when the series went to a deciding 5th or 7th game in the Stockton-Malone era, and the Jazz lost 7 times. There were too many times during those 13 games where Karl Malone left us wanting more and hardly any spectacular performances. And that is one word that you would never use to describe his playoff career. Speaking of extreme highs and lows, we move on to our next player, Russell Westbrook. Let's take a look at the numbers. He averaged 22.4 points per game on 44% shooting in the regular season for his career, and 24.5 points on 41% shooting in the playoffs. Unlike the previous 2 players, his scoring production went up. However, his shooting efficiency dipped quite a bit, and there were many times when Westbrook couldn't find the basket. In fact, there are currently 10 times where he shot under 40% for an entire series. But for years, this didn't affect his team. Between 2010 and 2016, he shot under 40% 6 times, but the Thunder ended up winning the series 4 times. That's what happens when you play with the most efficient volume scorer ever. It's also fair to say that during his younger years, he affected the game in many other ways. It's not just about scoring with him, but once a security blanket left for Golden State, his shooting deficiencies started to become a problem. In the following 3 postseason defeats, he shot under 40% for the series. But the worst example surely came in the 2021 playoffs. He was playing for the Washington Wizards, and they were playing against the Sixers. He shot 33% from the field on nearly 17 shot attempts per game. But hey, at least he averaged a triple-double for the series. So that makes everything okay, right? In all seriousness, he hasn't had any kind of success in the playoffs without Kevin Durant. He's been bounced from the first round 5 times since he's left. And he's been paired with star players such as Paul George, Bradley Beal, and an old Carmelo Anthony. It doesn't matter who he's playing with, the series always seems to end the same way. In his case, this isn't because he's scared of the moment or that he shrinks under pressure. It's quite the opposite. I think he wants it too badly. I think the passion and anger he plays with are a gift and a curse. For one, it has allowed him to accomplish some historic things, like averaging a triple-double for an entire season. But on the other hand, that anger clouds his judgment as a point guard of the team, and he would make a lot of head-scratching decisions. He doesn't seem to know how to channel that anger. He tries to force his will instead of being more cerebral. That's what players such as Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant were able to master. I don't think Westbrook ever will. We applaud the effort, but the execution is the main issue here. But we can't say the same about our final example, and that's James Harden. Let's take a look at the numbers. He averaged 24.7 points per game on 44% shooting in the regular season for his career, and 22.7 points on 42% shooting in the playoffs. If you think Westbrook is inefficient, get a load of Harden's numbers. There have been 10 series where he has shot under 40%. There have been 30 games where he has shot under 30%. In half of those games, he's shooting 20% or lower. Forget about him never being able to lead his team to the finals. It's that he turns into Mr. Freeze when his team needs him the most. It's the way he's allowed his team to be eliminated in the postseason. It's losing by 39 points against the San Antonio Spurs in 2017 without Kawhi Leonard in the lineup, and only scoring 10 points on 2 of 11 shooting on his home floor in Game 6. is going 2 of 13 from the three-point line in Game 7 of the 2018 Conference Finals against the Warriors, is taking only 9 shots in Game 6 of the 2022 semifinals against the Miami Heat with their season on the line, is going a combined 7 of 27 from the field and committing 10 turnovers in the final 2 games of the 2023 semifinals against Boston after having a 3-2 series lead. This dude never shows up in big moments in the playoffs. I think he's the worst playoff performer out of any top 50 player. Do you agree with that assessment, or who do you think is the worst? Let me know your take in the comments. Thanks for watching.